Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. My name is David Mitchell, and I'd like to say a few words about one of my favourite ever novels, Ridley Walker by Russell Hoban. Being a novelist, I'm a compulsive title giver to things, so the title I'd like to give my very short introduction is The Rumours of Riddley Walker. Books, I've noticed, find their way into our lives in various ways. Sometimes they're gifts. Sometimes they attach themselves to us during that mysterious process known as browsing. Sometimes a well-orchestrated media campaign and/or a book's own momentum keeps placing the book wherever we turn, and it's easier in the end just to read it than to keep having to explain why we haven't read it yet. Sometimes, however, books arrive more slowly and more gradually than this, initially as just rumours of books, as references, like whispers. And that's how Ridley Walker arrived in my life. It arrived before the book did. I was living in Canterbury, or Cambry, in Ridley speak, of course, as an undergraduate from 1987 for 3 or 4 years. And it was there that I first heard just rumours of this book called Ridley Walker, published a few years previously by a writer named Russell Hoban. The novel, by all accounts, was set in post-apocalyptic Kent. Life there was rather a bit like life in Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome, but with a characteristic English weather instead of glorious Australian weather. And the language in the novel, especially the language was all mangled. And here the rumour would often become a slightly feverish whisper. People would say, "I've never heard anything like it. It's about the language. It's like a different dialect of English." And often the room would end with people saying, "If I try to explain it all, I just won't do justice to it. But just read it. Just do yourself a favour and read it." Well, it took me a while before I did. It took me about 13 years, in fact. By then I was living in Hiroshima as the only foreigner in an engineering college with very few students and very few classes to teach. But when I wasn't teaching, which is most of the time, I was still expected to show my face at work and look busy in my office, which of course was a stipend, a gift to a young or to an aspiring novelist. There I wrote a chunk of my first novel, all of my second, and some pieces of what became my third novel, Cloud Atlas. The central part of Cloud Atlas is set in the future on a kind of a post-apocalyptic Hawaii, where even the memory of the apocalypse has become a distant legend. And this began to rhyme or chime with my memories of the rumours of Ridley Walker. I thought, well, that sounds useful. I should have a look. You never know what you might be able to borrow. So the next tranche of books I ordered on the departmental budget included Ridley Walker by Russell Hoban. It arrived. I was called up to the library where the boxes came in to retrieve my stash, and I put Ridley Walker in my bag and started reading it on the train on the way from the outskirts of Hiroshima back into the middle, where I got off the train. It's just that day I missed my stop. I was so into the book that I forgot to get off the train, and I didn't care. Because the rumours of Ridley Walker were, of course, turning into the reality of Ridley Walker. And as they did so, they gave me one of the most extraordinary reading experiences of my life. The story was compelling. The cosmology was fathoms deep and fascinating. And the characters were vivid. But most of all, what was this language? It was English, kind of. It was broken. It was mutated, rather like the world. And yet, if you read it aloud, or at least aloud in your head, if you know what I mean, it would yield up its logic. And its logic was beautiful. Its etymology was just playful and gorgeous and clever, as etymology is. So I'm really glad that Dr. March Russell and the Ridley 40 committee asked me to prepare this short response, because it prompted me to go back and have a look at a book that I have been talking about for years, but which I haven't actually read for over 20 years or so. And this reread is actually why my this submission is a little bit late, so apologies, Paul. I've been like a naughty student, endlessly after deadline extensions. Reading, as Nabokov famously said, is rereading, or maybe he said rereading is reading. But few rereads have ever yielded as much archaeological treasure that I missed first time around as my rereading of Ridley Walker. It's even better than I remembered. And I feel as if I'm not 51 years in the year of COVID-19, but 30 years old again, on a train, missing my stop on the outskirts of Hiroshima. I'd like to give Ridley the final word, as the events are all about him. And I'd just like to read a short section as he describes his father's funeral pyre. Reading from my book here, which just so happens to be signed. Here we go. This is just the beginning of chapter 4. We'd done the burning that night on the bye-bye hump. The moon were clouded over and a high wind blowing. I put the first torch to the stack, then straight at MP for the crowd, then Reckman Bessop for Widder's Dump, then Lorna Elswin for Lass. Orange flames upping in the dark and lighting all the faces round. Catching that time of that night stopped on all them faces. You could smell the burning sharp on the air, mixed with the meat smell from the divvy roof. Dogs began to howl, it were coming and going on the wind. The fire blowing in the wind, and sparks whoop off into the dark and gone. Dark and gone. Before the wording, we sung Sarvering Galaxies. Past the Sarvering Galaxies and flaming nebule eye, power us beyond the farthest reaches of the sky. Thine the hand, what shappet the black, guide us there and guide us back.